Hey, hey,
What up?
hey,
What up?
hey, man. Back at it
We started
again.
pretty much on time, huh?
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
For sure, man. So, man, lots going on in the world, man. There's been a lot going on, and we always here to give you a Friedman perspective on world events, the things that are happening in the now or what have you, man. So, yeah, man. What you think about this whole Syria thing, bro?
I mean, let me put our display names up
Mm-hmm.
so it's some BS.
Where's the tinfoil coolie, Koofy, man?
I,
Yeah, there it go.
you know, it's some BS. You know what I'm saying? As the title of the show is, one man's terrorist, another man's freedom fighter.
Right.
So you kind of gave you named the show. You kind of this is something he was really passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, kind of dealing with looking at the history and really more so the current events of the way that the U.S. government or the U.S. empire rehabilitates uh, terrorists, basically, or creates and manipulates the perception of what a terrorist is for their own purposes, right?
Yeah, for their own geopolitics, terrorist, dictator, you know what I'm saying? Good, good guy, bad guy, really no, you know what I'm saying? They act as if, the US acts as if, it has some sort of moral standing. A lot of times, is we're bringing democracy, or you know what I mean. This bad guy kills his own people, or whatever. You know what I mean. Whatever the case may be, to
Right.
ginny up the American public to support some sort of foreign intervention. Um, you know, um, on some on foreign soil, um, and when it's beating the war drum, and usually the corporate media gets right behind them and how they detail the story, relate the story, what have you. No, and it's the same. Manufacturing consent, as Noam Chomsky created the term. Um, and they highlight little bits of information here or there to persuade the public to ultimately support their the whatever their aims, whether it be all right vote vote overt, I'm sorry, I'm getting crazy, overt or convert, engagement, right? And it's been pretty much nonstop, since I would say World War, probably even prior to World War II, but for sure post World War II, right? Since we were quote unquote the main, one of the main people on the block. I well when and definitely since post the fall of the USSR or what have you, when we became the only major superpower. But a lot of these things that we've seen were shaped by that Cold War, post World War II, sense of America hegemony, trying to establish itself with this spheres of influence, and who's good and who's bad has a lot to do with that, and whoever's the enemy for that time being, and one day they could be a friend, one day they could be a foe. They can be a foe, then back to a friend. You know what I mean? And so our goal tonight is trying to, kind of pull some of those details out, and different engagements of, in the Middle East, broadly, and just throughout the world generally. And that's the goal of tonight, to try to show you that through line of where the U.S. has pretty much instigated almost a lot of these terrible conditions that we see in many parts of the world. I mean, if we were to go do an exhaustive list, we'll be here like all night. We probably have to break that down to a series or whatever. But there's definitely a method to the madness of how they do this and how they go about this. From covert operations supporting supporting quote unquote freedom fighters, rebels, whoever the case may be, all to where it goes to all out war, like we saw, in Vietnam, like we saw, in freaking, Iraq, Iraq War #1, 2, and right now, and then we're seeing, through, Ukraine, or what have you, you know, many people are suspecting that it was going to be the next one is going to be between us and Iran, right? And everything's kind of shaping up that way. Or if it's not us directly, it'd be through proxy, through Israel support, against Iran, and then which may lead, if they're losing, may lead to a direct involvement. So that's where we're really concerned about ultimately, because at the end of the day, why should Friedman care? Why is this? Why should this is not a reparations, so to speak, but unfortunately, because our government is tied down to all of these, interventions and covert, overt actions throughout the world. That's why our budget, our military budget, right, is freaking half of our freaking debt. Half of our budget, right? And that's and because of of our military involvement and our and the money is going to the military industrial complex as a result of all these different conflicts or what have you that we instigate and start for the most part or have some hand in. That's why we don't have true domestic policies that are worth a damn, to be honest with you. So instead,
yeah, and it's good that you brought that up, especially trying to frame the conversation through the lens of the importance of Friedman, because just like when we did that Ukraine show, we did the follow-up, and then I did the two-parter. People said that about Ukraine. What does this matter to us?
Mm-hmm.
And after that happened, and I said in the show, said these people gonna come to your neighborhood, they're gonna be the police, and and then 2 years or so in Illinois, they passed laws where non-citizens can be police officers.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen how not necessarily Ukrainians, but there are people from all over the world, South America, Central America, who have come to America, receiving all types of funding, housing, food assistance,
Mm-hmm.
all other types of benefits. Even here in the city of Detroit, there's a show called Detroit in Black and White. It's a YouTube news channel.
Mm-hmm.
And the new Detroit police chief, somebody was talking to him about whether or not the Detroit police will be assisting the Trump administration with deportations.
Right.
And he said, that's not our job or something like to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, you can't pick and choose when you want to follow federal law, and he was saying, well, that's just, we have, if they've committed violent crimes or whatever, then they'll be arrested or like trying to. And I said in the comments, I said the chief is explaining, because I just want to know if you because somebody was like, they were trying to defend him, basically trying to say, I don't understand the separation of powers between federal and state government. But I said, I just want to know if he's going to give that same courtesy to a citizen of the United States,
mm-hmm.
a Detroit resident who breaks a federal law and not a state law. Are you going to give me that same courtesy?
That's right, exactly. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Or are you going to beat me over the head? And
right.
9 times out of 10, or the most likely outcome is that you're going to beat me over the head about it. And so this is the thing. When you find, your elected officials, whether they be police or the judges or prosecutors or whoever, all up this chain, they can grow a backbone. They can have some type of moral fortitude, or they can have some kind of, what do they call that? Like conviction.
Oh,
they can have discretion, but they can have their convictions lead them to make decisions that make contradict the rule of law or the letter of the law,
mm-hmm.
right? When they want to. But in those instances when it would benefit us or when it would be helpful to us, they never seem to find the strength or the desire to do that, right? Now you can see where sometimes it seems like maybe with some of the protests and some of those things where, in my opinion, those were used to actually increase the heavy-handedness of police down the line. They allowed for protests to kind of be extreme and a little bit out of control because they knew that, that would turn public will and public sentiment against the protesters and against the message by maybe planting some rabble rousers within the crowd of protesters or some of those types of people within their agents, FBI, whatever.
Right.
So, but I don't want to take it down to a completely different way than you were going, but in general, this is how I see the situation. We need to understand that all of this has an impact on us because when you destabilize all these countries, those people go somewhere and they try to come here and they try to go to Europe and they try to go to Canada.
Exactly.
And we live here and we need help.
Right.
And ain't nobody helping us yet.
Right. So yeah, the humanitarian crisis that gets caused through because of these wars and interventions in Latin America, Middle East, Europe, so on and so forth, ends up always impacting the freedmen. I mean, think about it. This country primarily was, prior to a lot of the immigration that happened post 60s, right? This country primarily was really made up of only, two main groups, man. You know what I mean? The whites that were here, and then came, in the late 1800s, right? And then post Civil War, and then and then freedmen. You know what I mean? By far and large, and ultimately, immigration has always been used against us at the end of the day. But we're going to be talking about going more into the scope of what's going on in the Middle East and what my synopsis and what I can kind of see, what are the next steps and whether this may lead or what have you. So first and foremost, Stig, if you could bring up the screen, I'm just going to get us up to date on what happened. Bashar al-Assad was overthrown sometime earlier this month by rebels, and this is an ABC News report talking of such.
Now, before you push play, are these those moderate rebels Obama was talking about, or?
I believe so.
Remember that? Remember what he said that about ISIS? There was moderate rebels, or al-Nusra, or one of those.
One of those groups, man. They changed their names around, but basically they all the same people at the end of the day. You know what I mean? There's the Free Syrian Army. There's a lot of different groups. Some backed by Turkey, some backed by the U.S., some backed by Israel and the U.S. or Israel and the Kurds. It gets really, really hectic. But anyways, let's just get this latest news of where we're at, what's happening in Syria right now.
I can't hear it. We don't have sound on it.
You're saying you don't have sound? Because I shared it with sound. I made sure settings.
Are you using Firefox or Chrome? Because sometimes Firefox don't work. Okay.
It's Chrome. Share screen. Yeah, I have. Also share tab audio. I don't understand. Entire screen. Oh, that's why, because it was a entire screen and not my bad. Let me share again. Okay. So here, we'll just at least go back to here. Alrighty.
A 13-year civil war in Syria ended abruptly on December 8th after an armed Islamist faction, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, toppled the regime of longtime dictator Bashar al-Assad, ending his family's 53-year rule. In just 11 days, insurgents used the key M5 highway and overpowered Assad's military, seizing control of 5 Syrian cities in the western part of the country. In late November, HTS launched an attack on Aleppo, Syria's second largest city, seizing it within days, signaling the start of the revolution. Rebel forces captured Hamma on December 5th after advancing south along the M5 highway and seizing nearby towns. 2 days later, a faction of opposition fighters took the southern city of Daraa, a flashpoint for rebels in the 2011 revolution. As Daraa was falling, HTS continued their move south to the city of Homs, Syria's third largest city, and the location of pro-Assad and Russian military bases. Assad's fighters retreated and the insurgents took the city the next day. The march continued on December 7th as rebels surrounded the capital city of Damascus. Residents, sensing the end was near, flooded the streets and chanted for freedom. By the following day, December 8th, the fighters seized Bashar al-Assad's former palace, marking the end of his family's 53-year rule. Assad abruptly resigned and sought asylum in Moscow.
Just weeks ago,
You can take it off the screen, or I'll stop sharing. So, yeah, man, within days, like, you know, so the crazy part about this is like, back in 2011, so yeah, that's when Obama was in office, right? In 2011, there was, that was when the first rebel groups or civil war or insurgency, whatever you want to call them, you know, actually first, you know, pushed back to Bashar al-Assad, and so obviously al-Assad and his family ruled Syria since like the 50s. Hell, we just go into it, man. You know, I didn't even think about going on. Let me cover that. Let me find that one.
But
Go ahead.
I had no idea that Syria was that close to Cyprus, or Cyprus was that close to Syria.
Right? Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I remember I worked with a guy in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Muslim brother. He was from Mississippi, and he was a real good guy. We used to talk all the time. He would say, "You ever notice how ISIS never attacks Israel?" And I never thought about it, you know, until he brought that up. But ever since he said that, I never have stopped thinking about it. You know, they never, you never see any terrorist organizations, you know, Al Qaeda, the Mujahideen, the Taliban, Boko Haram. What's the one in Sudan?
Yeah, I forgot.
Dar al Salam.
Yeah.
These groups find a way to get into Israel, right?
Yeah, yeah, nor does any other governments, like, you know what I'm saying? Even the governments like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, you know what I'm saying? Turkey, you know, none of the only ones that do are the Shiite ones, you know what I mean? So like, and that's like kind of like a lot of the issues that are happening are the West through, you know, Europe, Israel, America. So when I talk about the West, I'm including all of them, right? They have ultimately have been able to, you know, help exacerbate. Obviously, I won't say they was the start, but they'll help exacerbate this tension between the Sunni Muslims and the Shia Muslims, right? And so they're using this divide, and they've been able to capitalize off this divide. No different than how when the white man came to North America, you know, there was tribes that worked with the French, right? There was tribes that worked with the British. You know what I mean? There was different tribes. They, you know, they're able to use existing, and this is anywhere colonization has ever occurred. You know, you enemy of my enemy is my friend type thing. If there's any long-standing, you know, issues between, you know, or underlying issues, exacerbate that, you know, because they can't be united. So we're gonna, you know, the whole you know, what is it? You know, united you stand, divided you fall type thing. And the West have been playing this game for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Because they've had, you know, centuries of doing so, right? Pitting this one minority group against the other. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, if you go back in, you know, Vietnam, like we used like this group, the Hmong people of Vietnam. You know what I'm saying? They were like they were a marginalized group in Vietnam, and U.S. CIA and special forces trained them and used them and for their operations against, you know, the North Vietnamese. You know what I'm saying? So like you know, and which a lot of Vietnamese people in California are from that particular sect of Vietnam, because a lot of them obviously when the South Vietnam fell to North Vietnam, right, and it became one country, you know, they were intricate in helping you know what I'm saying, us so much in what we were doing. You know, a lot of them was like, hey, you know, we need to, hey, we're gonna be merciful, you know, don't leave us. So you know what I'm saying? Which again, that's another aspect of it, you know. They made a whole movie, you know what I mean, about how, you know, this one Afghanistani guy who worked with the CIA. Now, of course, they embellished it, the movie that they did, or what have you. But you know, where I forgot the character, the dude that played the main character, white. You know, he was stuck behind. The Taliban was looking for him because he was an interpreter, right? You know what I'm saying? And the story, you know, the movie is a glorified version. Even though this shit didn't really happen like the way it happened. It had it like my man was going commando style. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna find that Turk. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? You know, and they had this. You know, it was definitely over exaggerated, or what have you. But the Turk saved his life. You know, he was on his critical mission. Like some parts of it's true, but a lot of it's, you know, or over glorified. But yeah, but you know, the people that we leave in our wake, hey, once we're done with it and we're, you know what I mean, hey, look, we got nothing else to take out of it, or this is not suiting our benefit. You know, look at the way we left Afghanistan, right? Look at the way, you know, pretty much you know, Iraq is all tore up and jacked up, you know, Libya, right? You know what I mean? Like this is over and over. It doesn't matter what administration is in power, Democrats or Republicans, it's the same shit. You know what I'm saying? That's why we turn on both of these, the uniparties, right? They're the same, you know, two sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? Ultimately, we serve corporate interest. You know what I'm saying? That's why people call America United States of Incorporation, right? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it seems like that's what the interest of this country kind of goes for, right? For our, you know, whether it's for material resources, some sort of access to some, you know what I'm saying, some rare minerals, oils, some you know, or industry, cheap labor, you know, whatever, you know, because the thing could change, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, for the longest time, you know, we only in the Middle East for oil, but there's a lot more than that also too. You know what I mean? It's access to certain, you know, major thoroughfares, like, you know, the Suez Canal, you know what I mean, Straits of Hamas, you know what I'm saying, you know, our shipping, you know what I mean, many different facets of could be U.S. interest. Like I said, access to our, you know, our ability to, you know what I'm saying, either enter markets or exit markets, you know what I'm saying, extract from those markets or enter those markets, you know, whether it be our goods, our services, our technology, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of different things that could be like, you know, the impetus behind, you know, why we are backing this particular, you know, government, while we're involved in this particular region of the world, you know what I mean? But it's all in the surface of some sort of capitalism of some sort of extent, some you know, financial incentive or what have you. I've been talking for a little while. Still, I know you want to jump in.
Well, yeah, and I mean, even like this, you know, like you talked about, they called Assad one of the members of the Axis of Resistance, along with Iran and Yemen.
Lebanon.
Yeah. And Lebanon, because they resisted, you know, what was the Arab Spring, which happened in Egypt. I believe that was around 2011, like you were talking about, in the Obama administration, which was the first attempt at an overthrow of the Assad, they say, regime. And I mean, you know, I guess maybe by definition that might be the accurate word, although that term tends to have a connotation of some kind of evil dictatorship to our ears. But I mean, these countries have a strategic partnership with Russia, so that also has the added benefit for the U.S. of creating a burden or a hassle on Russia,
right,
on China, because as you said, Russia and China are trying to create a multipolar world where there is more open and fair distribution of resources and opportunity among, countries that are, called in a lot of contexts the global south or emerging market nations or emerging economies, developing nations. And so, yeah, you find, and this is like when you asked me earlier and I put on the tinfoil kufi, I mean, you already know, but this is why, when you were saying, how do I feel about it? I follow Aaron Mate, who was with the Gray Zone. He used to write for a couple different publications, did an expose or investigative report on the Syrian gas attack. I don't know if you remember that. I think it might have been around 2016, 2017, where they accused Assad of gassing his own people.
Did it? Oh, yeah, okay. Which could have, maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
well, they said he did. The right, OPCW, right. Which is the organization for the prohibition of chemical weapons, if I'm not mistaken, they said that he used gas, but two investigators contradicted that, saying that they were there and there was no evidence that the canisters that they found had been used by the Assad regime, and that it more than likely had been used by terrorist organizations. And it was a situation where it was like America was pulling out. Trump wanted to leave, right? He wanted to leave Syria because he was trying to leave everywhere. And like the day before Trump was supposed to pull America out, supposedly Assad ended up gassing his own people. And so it's like, why would a guy do that? Why would a guy who's got America leaving and wants America to leave do something like this, which would cause America to stay? Now, another thing that, Jimmy Dore talks about a lot with Assad is Trump would say, because, and I use this on Chat GPT, right? I did this a lot. When the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened, I would say, is the Russian invasion, is Russia, are they illegally occupying Ukraine? And Chat GPT would say yes and all this stuff. And I would ask questions about, well, why do you feel that way? Aren't these such and such things that kind of prerequisites for this invasion? Haven't they been met? Isn't this in Russia's own, national interest and this territorial sovereignty and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, is the U.S. illegally occupying Syria? And it said, well, technically, but something. I said, well, how is it technically? But and this is the AI. You know what I'm saying? This is Chat GPT equivocating for the U.S. government. I'm saying, how do you I said, either it's right or it's wrong, right? So is this acceptable? Is the U.S. illegally occupying? Hasn't the Syrian government asked the U.S. to leave? Well, yes, they have. I said, so then isn't the United States government illegally occupying Syria? And we occupy a third of the country, the third that has the oil on it, which Trump has famously said, we went there, I got the oil, we have the oil, I have troops there, so, I mean, as you said, we are stealing resources, we're interfering with domestic internal politics, we are interfering with the foreign policy of these nations and their ability to establish trade, maintain trade, or to establish trade networks or foreign policy networks. And we believe, and the mainstream media who works as mouthpieces for the security state and the intelligence state, perpetuate this belief that it's okay because we're doing it, right? That because America is doing it and we have some kind of moral authority in the world, even though, as you acknowledge, we don't, it's okay. And for the most part, many of us completely ignore it all because we believe whatever the TV tells us to. So we don't even think about it, whether or not we actually believe the stories that we hear, and so we end up in these situations where ultimately we are made less safe. As a nation, we are made less safe. And as, freedmen, we are made less safe. So I see you got another screen share. You want to pull it up?
Yep. So I figured we'll just go into a little bit of this, of all the different groups and who's back and who, since we mentioned it.
Specifically Syria, and to help you understand the different groups, we have this map showing four main factions fighting against each other: the Syrian government forces, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, and the Turkish-aligned Syrian rebel forces. On November the 30th, 2024, opposition forces captured more territory, expelled government forces from villages in eastern Idlib, and began advancing toward the M5 highway, a strategic road leading south to the capital, Damascus, approximately 300 kilometers, which is around 186 miles away. As we all know, it is no secret that the Syrian government forces relies on Russian military equipment, from tanks to artillery shells, not to mention the Air Force from MiG-29 to helicopters, while the rebels primarily use pickup trucks and tube-launched missile or tow missiles to fight against tank. More details all in the video ahead. To provide a clearer picture of Syria's complex and fragmented conflict, it is crucial to understand the territorial control among the key players on the ground. Four primary factions dominate different areas of the country, each backed by varying external powers and ideologies. The Syrian government forces, marked in red on many conflict maps, represent the Bashar al-Assad regime's primary military apparatus.
That was what was overthrown. This is no longer. This obviously was past tense. Let me see. What was the date of this video? 11 days ago. But yeah, obviously this is no longer. The red portion of the map is gone.
It was overthrown. It was overthrown by that little lime green colored thing in the top.
Right.
I guess it would be the northwest quadrant.
Right.
Of the page. That little thing overthrew this whole portion here.
Now the part that the U.S. is backing, right, is the Kurds. They have the oil. The northeastern portion is the U.S. Is where the U.S. is involved. U.S. via Turkey, right? This and troops are in here, as well as they'll keep on going into it. Let me let it go.
These forces are supported by the National Defense Forces, a pro-government paramilitary group. The Assad regime also benefits from the significant backing of Russia, Iran, and Hezbollah, whose combined efforts have fortified and sustained its control over large swaths of territory, particularly in central and western Syria. The Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, represented in yellow, consists largely of Kurdish fighters. This group, backed by the United States, controls much of eastern Syria, including areas rich in oil reserves. The SDF has played a critical role in the fight against ISIS and continues to manage regions under its control with the support of its international allies. HTS and other allied rebel factions, shown in green, operate primarily in the northwest. HTS, an evolution of the Al-Nusra Front, previously aligned with Al-Qaeda until severing ties in 2016, remains a dominant force in this region. Despite internal divisions,
and
many believe that that's just on the surface.
let me say, there was a report done. I forget who. I can find it, but it's kind of. But the U.S. in the Middle East, I think specifically in Syria, the Pentagon will fund one group, and the CIA will fund another group, and they fight each other.
Right.
There has been documented cases where the U.S. government has airdropped weapons to ISIS. They say accidentally, but
Right.
and then there's other instances where these pickup trucks reminded me. I don't know if they're the same ones, but the U.S. or the Pentagon or the Department of Defense, whoever, or the CIA, somebody, the U.S. government lost track of like Toyota pickup trucks.
Yes, yeah, they don't know. There's always Toyota. Yeah, yeah. We used to call them technicals. Yeah, but go ahead.
Call them what, technicals?
Yeah. That's the in military jargon, technicals. But yeah, go ahead.
They lost track of some pickup trucks.
Right.
And then ISIS came out with brand new Toyota pickup trucks.
Right.
Not brand new, but they started using, and so it's just like,
and not even so. I mean, when ISIS went, because ISIS actually went into Western Iraq, like they was about to take over Iraq. You know what I mean? And if it wasn't for the Shia in Iraq that and U.S. armed forces to repel them, because this northern western portion of Iraq is Sunni. That's what they used to call it, the Sunni triangle, right? Like these are Sunni areas. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so the Iraqi government, the ones that we were back in, suppose we had trained and all them years that we were there, they's like, fuck this, we gone, like all of, like it's a repeat story over and over and over again, bro. The Afghanistan national government, that we spent all that money giving them all that equipment, you know what I'm saying? And when the first time some real shit goes down and they don't have the U.S. government, air support, you know what I'm saying? Like we're not flying sorties, you know what I mean? Close air support. We'll have our military advisors, like or our regular army people, bro. They taking off the uniforms, getting the F out of Dodge. You know what I'm saying? So that's what happened. And so they literally, ISIS was taking over bases that we had, that we had just given over to them. We evacuated those U.S. bases that, you know what I'm saying, we just gave it to the Iraqi government. You know what I mean? And and that's how they got them. They was, you know what I'm saying, they were driving in MRAPs. You know what I'm saying? That fucking Toyota van, a Toyota truck, bro. We talking about a mine-resistant up armored Humvees in a mine. Let me show you a picture of an MRAP. You know what I'm saying? They had MRAPs, bro. I was like, are you kidding me, man? You know what I'm saying?
Brother Gerard is the Freedman Collective resident military expert.
Yeah, they dog. They was in this. They, you know what I'm saying? It was, let me, bro. If I remember correctly, bro, ISIS. I was like, wow, because they just got up and just left, man. ISIS and MRAPs. Yeah, you know what I mean. Let me find it. I know Iraqi Kruger MRAP was struck ISIS ATM during operation. I know, hold on. ISIS seizes how you spell species? Seize U.S. equipment.
SEIZ.
That's C. So you said seizes S.
Yeah. SEIZE. S. Seizes. S.
S-E. Yeah. There you go. My bad.
Well, that's all good.
So definitely Taliban did, but U.S.-backed forces seized ISIS camp. Man, man, because it was a while ago. So
you probably have to go on RT or something.
Taliban.
I know that RT will have it, but you can't really find them nowhere on YouTube no more because they don't let them be on YouTube. But yeah, I mean.
Yeah, here we go. Here we go, right here. Look,
militants loyal to rebel group ISIL, now called the Islamic State, have flexed their military muscles by displaying their tanks and equipment in Syria. In a video which cannot be independently verified, a convoy.
See, this is an MRAP. You see what I'm saying? Obviously, this is 10 years ago, right? Yeah. This is and this is them, because you know what I'm saying. The Iraqis just like, hey. You know what I mean? And these, you don't need keys. You don't need keys to start these vehicles. You know what I'm saying? They're diesel. So all you know what I'm saying? Yeah. You don't necessarily need a key, quote unquote. What you do, you can lock the vehicle, you know what I'm saying? But they probably, you fleeing, you ain't got time to, you know what I mean? They didn't even take the equipment with them. They didn't even flee in the vehicles. They could at least flee. I mean, bro, you could put a You know what I'm saying? These have turrets. You can arm these with what we call a 50 cal or M24 Bravo. You know, that's what we had on my gun truck. You know what I'm saying? Like they just bounced. But look, yeah, look.
Convoy of armored vehicles are paraded through the streets of Raqqa in eastern Syria. The militant Islamist fighters claim to be celebrating their declaration of an Islamic caliphate after the group captured territory in neighboring Iraq.
Not doing donuts in the tank.
The move follows a 3-week drive for territory.
I mean, eventually we took all of this back. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But it was like, wow, bro, like all of that fighting, all of that, you know what I'm saying? And the first little resistance, you know what I'm saying? The Sunnis of the Iraqi army, you know what I mean? It took the Shia militias to fight ISIS. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Right.
so you know what I mean? Like because they was just boom, and then we backed other other groups to fight ISIS. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, bro. So you know the Kurds, but we also, like I said, some other, you know, like I said, because they split. Ultimately, they split. We're gonna go into all of that because Jelani was. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, since you brought up the Kurds before, and then you brought them again, I wanted to say before I forgot, the Turkey doesn't get along with the Kurds. So the U.S. is allied with Turkey. They're a NATO partner, and they're not in the EU, but they're a NATO partner. So that was when the Cuban Missile Crisis popped off, because the U.S. had nuclear weapons in Turkey aimed at the Soviet Union. And so the Soviets said, we're going to put, nukes in Cuba. But so Turkey's a U.S. ally. The U.S. are backing the Kurds in Syria. They, however,
And
are
Iraq.
also
And Iraq.
Yeah. They're backing the Kurds in Iraq. They always do the Kurds dirty. Like, I don't get how the Kurds continue to trust the U.S. because whenever the U.S. government is done with them, they just leave them high and dry.
Right.
But Turkey is also a U.S. ally, and they have beef with the Kurds.
Right.
So they plan to destroy the Kurds at any given opportunity.
Right.
And so you have this conflict working itself through simultaneous to this greater conflict you have going on. And it's really just a cluster.
Yep, exactly. No different than when we went into Iraq. You know, it's going to be the issue with the Shia, the Sunnis, and the Kurds. You know what I'm saying? You know, but yeah. But anyways, let's finish up this.
HES maintains significant influence over the territories it controls. In the north, Turkish-backed rebel forces, including the Syrian National Army, hold ground along the Turkish border. Turkey has supported these groups as part of its broader strategy to counter Kurdish influence and establish a buffer zone. These areas, often marked in different shades of green, reflect Turkey's active involvement in the Syrian conflict. Meanwhile, these patches, the Islamic State or Daesh-dominated territory, still persist in some isolated desert regions, a stark reminder that the group's threat has not been entirely eradicated. Finally, in the south, additional rebel groups maintain a presence, and the Golan Heights adds a further layer of complexity. Israel claims sovereignty over this territory, citing its capture during the 1967 Six-Day War, while Arab nations and the broader international community often regard it as occupied territory. Understanding these dynamics is key to grasping the intricacies of Syria's civil war. If you have any thoughts or additional questions about the situation, feel free to share them in the comment section below. On November 27, Syrian opposition armed groups launched a sudden and audacious offensive that took many by surprise. This operation was spearheaded by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, commonly abbreviated as ATS. Known for its strategic capabilities, HTS and its allied rebel forces in northwest Syria swiftly advanced through the...
So, yeah, they're going to be talking more about military. We got the gist, though. That's what I want to kind of, saying, looking at all these different sides who they're backed by, the possible situation. But yeah, let's see. What was it here? We're going to go into the guy who actually defeated Jelani. I mean, Al-Jelani, right? This Syrian rebel leader that the U.S. has been, so he's been on CNN, PBS, interviewed this guy. Who is this dude, man? He's the leader of HTS and presumably the leader of all the rebels as of right now. We'll see how far that goes.
The Syrian Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, right. Actually, he's Palestinian. You know what I mean? That's what.
Really?
Yeah. He's actually Palestinian. He's actually from Gaza. You know what I'm saying?
He don't care about his people, but he worried about this.
Hey, it's wild, man. Wow,
Hey.
They say politics make strange bedfellows. I guess geopolitics as well. I guess it's extended to geopolitics / war as well. But hey, let's go into this dude, man.
East has been turned upside down in just 2 weeks. And this is the man responsible for the fall of Assad. He is Ahmed al-Shara, better known as Abu Muhammad al-Jilani, the leader of the rebel militia Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS. Jilani is considered a terrorist by many countries, and the United States has a $10 million bounty on his head. The country now has a transitional government, and Jilani is its military leader, but some already see him as the de facto head of the new Syria. We're going to tell you about his journey to becoming the face of a revolution and what Jilani's leadership could mean for the future of Syria and the wider world. This is Syria's rebel leader explained. Another week and another explainer on Syria. Last time we looked at how Assad's allies had deserted him and left him vulnerable to losing power. Here, we're going to talk about the man who defeated him. Ahmed Hussein al-Shara was born in Saudi Arabia in 1982. His family had moved there from Syria. They lived in the Golan Heights, but had to flee after it was occupied by Israel following the Six-Day War. And the name Jilani was chosen by him as a reference to his family's origins in the Golan Heights. When he was
okay, so I misrepresented that. I thought they were talking about Gaza, so it's the Golan Heights. So my bad. So he is Syrian. My bad.
I mean, either way, he should still have a beef with
with Israel
more than
Yeah.
Syria.
It was. What was it, bro? It was. I don't know if it was. It wasn't. I don't think it's his group per se. But one of these rebel groups was like, "Hey, look, Israel, we need you all to help us, because otherwise, you know what I'm saying. If you don't help us, then these other mofo's gonna be right there on your doorstep." But odds are they not. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, because again, the threat, unfortunately, is for them are the Shia, and at one point in time, I don't know if this video explains the break between Al Qaeda and ISIS and Jilani. Well, we'll go into it, but we'll let the
7, he returned to Syria, settling in the capital, Damascus. As a young man in 2000, he watched the start of the Second Intifada, a major uprising by Palestinians against Israel, and Jilani says this began his pathway to jihadism. A year later, Al-Qaeda carried out the 9/11 attacks against the United States.
يكذب عليك أي شخص يعيش في العالم الإسلامي.
Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. When he was 7, he
الوطن العربي.
Palestinians against Israel.
I just wanted to pause there. I don't believe that shit at all. I don't believe no plane hits 2 buildings and it falls in on its own footprint. That doesn't happen because of a plane, bro.
Not at all, bro.
Nah, but anyway.
And Jilani says this began his pathway to jihadism. A year later, Al-Qaeda carried out the 9/11 attacks against the United States.
يكذب عليك أي شخص يعيش في العالم الإسلامي والوطن العربي إذا قال لك أنه لم يكن سعيد في ذاك الوقت.
With America invading Afghanistan and then preparing for war against Iraq, Jilani traveled to Baghdad, and he was there when the conflict began. He joined the fight against the US occupation, and in 2005, he was imprisoned in a US-run jail in Iraq. It was in that prison that he met Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the man who would become the leader of the jihadist group, the Islamic State, or IS. Jilani says he used his time in prison to write a thesis about how to fight jihad in Syria.
Syrian society has been brutalized for the best part of 5 decades. So Jolani, like many Syrians, is a product of that brutalizing, barbaric environment. And that really helped fuel his trajectory into the global jihad movement.
In 2011, Jolani was out of prison and the Arab Spring had begun across the Middle East. Mass civilian protests against authoritarian regimes. And Syrians were out in the streets as well, demonstrating against President Bashar al-Assad. They were met with brutal force, and rebel groups took up arms against Assad's forces. Jolani was sent back to Syria by his former prison mate, Baghdadi, back with funds to create a new jihadist group to fight against the regime. Jolani established the Al-Nusra Front, which quickly became a prominent fighting force.
فنحن في غضون سنة واحدة من هؤلاء 6 أصبحنا 5000.
But while Jolani used the financial backing of Baghdadi, he distanced himself from the leader after the creation of the Islamic State. Jolani's Al-Nusra Front instead joined Al-Qaeda, becoming their key fighting force in Syria.
He's quite a slippery character who's always been titrating different relationships up and down based on what they're going to serve and deliver for him.
It wasn't long before Jolani announced a split from Al-Qaeda too. And in 2016...
So this dude, man, like if this is a guy who's ripe to be controlled by, you know, by the CIA, but you know what I mean, or by whatever major group, is whatever it is, you know what I'm saying, is the flavor of the week. He almost like Kamala, you know what I'm saying?
Well, this is what I think is interesting. They're talking about this guy who got a $10 million bounty,
right,
by the U.S. government, more glowingly than they talked about Donald Trump or the January 6 people. And this dude has killed people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Like
they're trying to humanize this man,
soldiers, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know,
they're trying to humanize this man.
Right.
If anything the U.S. have ever said was true, he should already be dead. He should already have a bullet in his head right now.
But again, you know, one day you a terrorist, next day you a freedom fighter, rebel leader. You know what I mean? But let's continue.
He formed the group that would become Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS.
علما أن هذا التشكيل الجديد ليس له علاقة بأي جهة خارجية.
It's clear that Jolani relied on both ISIS and Al-Qaeda to establish his military foothold in Syria. And Amnesty International accused al-Nusra, along with 4 other rebel groups, of committing war crimes and other violations of international humanitarian law with impunity. But Jolani has tried to distance himself from some of the most extreme elements of jihadism. The man who cites 9/11 as having a key moment in his journey to becoming a fighter also says that he always opposed the killing of innocent civilians in his fight against the Americans in Iraq, as well as against the Assad regime in Syria. One of his key messages to Syria, as well as the wider world, is that while ISIS and Al-Qaeda fight a religious war, his war has always been against President Bashar al-Assad. With that firm focus on Syria, HTS under Jolani became the dominant force in the northwestern Syrian province of Idlib, home to 4 million people in 2019, a rebel stronghold in the face of the Assad regime. They created a civilian front, the Syrian Salvation Government, appointing ministers and providing public services. Jolani was very visible at this time, engaging with the public, and he reached out to non-Muslim communities as well, something very different to both ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
He has, over the last 2 or 3 years, for example, been showing himself at churches, been showing the erection of Christmas trees in areas that he controls. He's been very keen to project this image as a competent statesman.
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's like, listen, you know what? He's like, hey man, with all the you know, head killing and, you know, head chopping and shit like that, you know, we gonna eat. That ain't good for the media. That's not right. That, you know what I'm saying? Somebody in the PA section was like, you know, we're gonna be the nicer jihadi guys. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So we can get this money, bro. You know. You know.
Well, see, and my wife actually pointed this out, and I didn't really think about it. But he looks a lot like Zelensky. Yeah. He's just taller. His beard is longer. And so he just the Middle East Zelensky. Right. He's gonna get all that money, you know, He gonna be on the press junket.
Yeah,
He
right,
gonna be in
right.
Vogue magazine.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm
man of the
saying?
year.
Right. He gonna be at the Oscars and the Grammys. He gonna be
Oh.
hugging up with what's his name? That Saucy Santana. They're gonna have him over there with Saucy Santana twerking on stage. You know what I'm saying? Because this is what the world is now. It's just all foolishness and
vibes.
Right. That's all it is. It's ridiculousness. And we
Yeah,
all falling for it. Imagine, I mean, listen to how they talking about, like they trying to write him a presidential campaign, bro. Like they're really sitting here trying to. And I mean, you know, we live in Michigan, you know, home to the largest population of Arabs and Muslims or people from the Middle East in the country. I don't remember. Yeah, the largest. I don't remember. And maybe obviously I'm not in part of those communities, and you know, I don't remember anybody cheering for 9/11. You know what I'm saying? Now maybe, you know,
no, not
where
here,
he
not,
lives,
not in this country, but over there, yeah, overseas they did for sure. I mean, you know,
because that just to me, it's the same way I look at this thing with the CEO, where you do have some people who are cheering, but ultimately it's an empty gesture because it's not going to change anything. That's at best what 9/11 would be, even if you really believed that it was done by some you know, in this case, I guess from their perspective would be freedom fighters who were trying to strike back at the US empire. Like, this didn't do anything. This did nothing to transform the conditions. Like, I remember, you know, when they talked about the World Trade Center, because I didn't have any idea about any of that. And they're like, yeah, the world, and I thought it was like the United Nations. You know what I'm saying? And then I found like, oh, we got World Trade Centers all over the country. It's like one in Chicago. It's like one in San Francisco. And I'm sitting like, oh, who cares? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I was only like really young, so the death toll thing hadn't really. I don't even think they had talked about that at that point. I think they were still just talking about the planes hitting, and it was just like, well, it's not really significant to the world. It's just the name they call these buildings. It's not, you know, it doesn't serve any legitimate purpose as far as like a centralized power structure or international forum.
It was an office building, you know what I'm saying? It was two office buildings. But I mean, you know, it was symbolic, I guess. You know, they had you know, there was that was the second attempt, quote unquote, after the first one in '93, where they, you know, tried to blow up the World Trade Center. I don't know if it was necessarily Al Qaeda, but it was definitely another group, Islamist group. So that, you know, yeah, you know, it is what it is, man. Ultimately, you know, the story was that, you know, it was 19 or 15 Saudi Arabians and 2 or 17 or however, I think it was 19 total, 17 of them or 15 of them were people from Saudi Arabia, you know, and like maybe 2 from Yemen, and allegedly, and I think the whole point of it wasn't to change the conditions in the Middle East, but to provoke the U.S. to openly engage in warfare with the Muslim world, and therefore to incite the Muslim world to actually respond in kind, right? That was the goal. Same as when ISIS started. I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this video is going to cover, because I've watched a few videos, but one of the big beasts between Al Qaeda and ISIS was that ISIS started attacking a lot of the Shia shrines in Baghdad, right? They were going after, I forgot the name of this brigade, I had to look it up, but they were engaging, you know, they were doing, you know, suicide bombings, attacking historic Shiite, you know, mosque and sites and things of that nature. And so Al Qaeda was like, why are you focusing on, like, so their thing was like Israel and the US is the bigger problem. not the Shia, right? You know what I'm saying? They do view Shias as being like non-Muslim, but they're like, that's the smaller problem. Deal with the bigger problem. And so Baghdadi's response was, you understand, like, we want this engagement to happen so we can go into a fuller engagement. You know what I mean? So they had a difference of, I guess, strategies, and hence that's why Al-Qaeda split. And this guy Jelani was obviously smart enough to say, you know what, I'm not gonna get into that fray. You know what I mean? Like, I guess he obviously could see the domino effect of where that was going to go, and chose to not engage. But let's continue on.
For some time now.
While HDS has taken a seemingly conciliatory approach to governing non-Muslim communities, at the same time, it has also ruthlessly suppressed other opposition groups. And it's been reported that HDS has tortured and killed civilians in their detention centers. That brings the story up to this year, where the battle lines in Syria were essentially frozen, until this happened. With conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon, and with Russia fighting Ukraine, the world's attention was not on Syria when HDS launched a surprise offensive late in November. Within days, Aleppo had fallen. A huge moment. HDS had taken Syria's second largest city. Assad, with the support of Russian fighter jets, responded with airstrikes. But the strength of support from Assad's allies, Iran, Russia, and Hezbollah in particular, was limited. And on the ground in Syria, Assad's own forces crumbled in the face of the HDS assault. Jelani's forces took Hama, a city that had previously never fallen into rebel control following the 2011 uprising.
The progress and execution of plans have been swift, with clear communication and adherence to commands. The revolution has transitioned from chaos and randomness to a state of order.
HDS then swept Homs and reached the capital, Damascus. Meanwhile, Assad fled to Russia with his whole family. As he entered the capital, Jelani dropped his name associated with his jihadist past. He is Ahmed al-Shara once again and is promising a new start for Syria. In less than a fortnight, the entire complexion of Syria has completely changed, and so too has the Middle East. Without Assad in charge, Iran and Hezbollah have been dramatically weakened, and Russia, which relied on the former regime for a foothold in the region, is facing the prospect of negotiating with the same rebel forces it's been fighting against for more than a decade.
The Russian column has just set off again. They were stuck for nearly 2 hours at the side of the road with a flat tire. They don't look like a defeated army. They're retreating in good order. They must have come to some kind of agreement with the new authorities in Damascus.
What al-Jelani and Hayat Tahrir al-Sham have achieved in Syria is simply breathtaking. Jelani launched essentially a blitzkrieg attack against.
But it was allowed. Best believe. You saw how the Russians latest leaving because it's allowed, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if the U.S. didn't want this to happen, it wouldn't have happened. You know what I mean? If Israel didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't have happened. Because they got control of the air of the air. They could have, if they had wanted to, they could have attacked the columns. You know what I'm saying? Easily. Let's say they, in favor of one group over the other, right? So the U.S. is allowing this. Now, another thing that I could look up, you can show. Immediately after this happens, Israel starts attacking Syria. The U.S. starts attacking ISIS locations in Syria immediately. And you know what I'm saying? And Jelani and them don't say nothing about it. They allowing it. You know what I mean? I was like,
which kind of further, helps me to kind of come to the conclusion that this guy's a puppet. Like I said, you don't have all these negative interactions with Israel and the United States government and think, well, my first course of action is to overthrow Bashar al-Assad and try to work out some alliance. Like even he said, from north to the south to the east to the west. Bro, the U.S. is still occupying a third of Syria. Turkey's still in Syria. Israel's actively pushing past the Golan Heights already. You know what I'm saying? They're already actively past the Golan Heights. So if anything, they're going to balkanize Syria The only thing is Turkey is going to actively fight against the U.S. allowing the Kurds to have any territory that would formally be considered a Kurdish state like Kurdistan or anything like that. So that's not going to happen. As far as like Russia, all their military bases have been completely untouched. They've been completely unmolested by the HTS group. And that's because at the end of the day, these guys know if Russia was to actually respond with any kind of force, that would probably end them too. I mean, you know, civilian damages or not, that would just be what it is. But yes, they've gone past the Golan Heights already now at this point, and they're actively pushing to create, they say, a buffer that goes deeper into the country of Syria. So, I mean, this guy's completely, you know, he's completely been bought off. If anything, he's just a face to put on the deeds and actions of the security state or the deep state, you know, the intelligence, the community, you know, like the CIA and all these other organizations, because there's no way you could take this. There's no way you can look at what he's talking about and look at how he's behaving and look at how these news organizations are talking about him and trying to have this nuanced conversation about who he is and believe that he's legitimate or that he's sincere or that this is, like you said, some kind of well-orchestrated situation planned out by Israel, the U.S., and the West in general. There's just no way you could see it any other way.
Okay. Let's see here. This is only 3 minutes.
And if I'm not mistaken, he says he's not gonna fight back against Israel. He's you know, he's gonna disband the rebel group. He's not gonna do anything against any of these attacks. And so you just install, if Assad and his father were puppets of some Western control, then, you know, he's just the newest puppet. I mean, no different than the Shah of Iran back in the 50s or the 60s, whenever they put him in place. You know, it's a continuation, even like the Saudis. They were put in, right? The U.S. put those people, or the West. I would say the U.S.
It was British, right? But you know, that's what the whole Lawrence of Arabia, you know, is about. That's what that movie is about. You know, ultimately showing how the British were, you know, instigated the Arabs because they were under the Ottomans at that point in time. But here, let's see what is. So what's this about? Yeah, I think. That it said that he ordered the Palestinian factions in Syria to disband. So this is more proving. This is proving more what your point. You know what I'm saying? What of all the people, he's saying he's going to disband the Palestinians in Syria. They need to disband. This is obviously
you should be trying to serve as a point where they can actually organize to overthrow the Israeli government, who is creating a genocide against their people back home.
Yeah, but this is why he was put in place, you know, because the Syrian regime worked with Iran, and they were the big, you know what I'm saying? Iran is to the east of Syria, and they had a land route to be able to get weapons to Hezbollah. You know what I'm saying? Which is in Lebanon, which is, you know, on the northern border, northwestern border of or western border of Syria. So this destroys that, you know what I'm saying, that connection, that supply route. You know what I mean? Like that's gone completely now. As you can see, HTS demanded put Palestinian fractions, close training camps, and halt military actions. He doesn't say anything about, you know, asking Israel to stop bombing his country. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, he's not saying, you know, hey, Israel, why are you invading my country? It's one of his first things is to say something to the Palestinians. I'll let you know, bro.
In 20 to 50 years, the U.S. will be killing him, if you know, because they'll be tired of him and somebody else will be put like they did Saddam.
Yep.
Under supervision.
Earlier, Hezbollah confirmed losing the Syria-based weapon supply route after Assad's fall. You know what I mean?
نحن دعمنا سوريا لأنها في الموقع المعادي لإسرائيل وساهمت في تعزيز قدرات المقاومة عبر أراضيها للبنان وفلسطين. أما الآن فقد سقط النظام على يد قوى جديدة.
Now, I'm not for sure if this is a Lebanese person or this is Iranian, because both of them are Shias, you know what I'm saying? Well, they have groups of Shias, you know what I mean? More likely, this is a Iranian, you know, politician or religious figure or somebody in the Iranian government, but it doesn't say. But that's what he's speaking to, saying that, hey, we lost this, but maybe another regime may come to play and they can get it back again. Ultimately, what I think all of this is leading up to is this is just inviting. We know these different groups are going to clash. I'll be surprised if Jelani really was able to. First and foremost, it's not going to be any type of form of democracy. You might as well. Hey, that ain't happening. You know what I mean? So if any ideas that they're going to have open elections and they're going to, you know, vote in whoever is going to be the new president or prime minister of Syria, that's not going to occur. So more likely than not, Jelani is going to be, you know, a strong man of some sort. If these other groups don't come in line or get in line, then, you know, he'll be supported by whoever to, you know, suppress those groups. And maybe, you know, odds are is going to get worse before it gets better, and then that will only further bring in U.S. Western powers, i.e., via Israel, to say, oh, well, you know, we need to secure our defense by going on the offense and bringing, you know, control and peace, you know, to Syria, or, you know, maybe they won't do a whole, maybe they won't do a full, you know, occupation of the country, Israel, but just enough to where, you know, just enough to where they could openly justify it. I don't think they'll actually start doing settlers and, you know, like what they've done in the West Bank. I don't, you know, maybe not this year, I think that'll probably be decades in the making. But make a long story short, all of this is not going to bode well, and that's the play that ultimately I wanted to talk about and get to, is that these things that are happening in Syria, I believe, are all orchestrated, and I think it's trying to lead us to get into another conflict where we'll be in a decades-long war or occupation or whatever the case may be, where the only ones who are going to be profiting are the people who sell arms and make missiles and planes and artillery. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the only people that's going to be benefiting from that are the the military industrial complex. That's it. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna make billions and billions of dollars in contracts, making these missiles, these armaments, weapon systems, and commercial satellites, military satellites. You know what I mean? All that technology that's being used is hundreds and hundreds of millions and trillions of dollars. That's where I think this is really trying to, where I foresee this is going next, is that this is going to suck. Then what I'm saying, it's going to be Iran, Lebanon, all these Shia governments are going to respond in some way or form or fashion. They're going to respond because they're just taking L after L after L after L, and you can only take L's for so long, bro. Before yeah. Either that or they'll try to justify us getting trying to do a regime change in Iran or instigate some sort of rebel group, you know what I mean, or rebellion in Iran, and then instead of us in the past, we tacitly support the rebel groups or the uprisings, we'll actually actively support and actively overthrow the regime in Iran. That's where I kind of see where this is all going to at the end of the day.
I mean, I think a lot is going to ramp up before January 20th because Trump has already vocalized that he doesn't want the U.S. involved in any international conflicts. So I think, he's going to instruct Israel. I know he's talked to Netanyahu, or at least I've read that he's talked to Netanyahu about having a lot of these things set up so that, these are issues. And I know he's already made his thoughts clear about Zelensky and Ukraine and Russia and Putin. So I think, I think we'll see what happens. I think that's one of the reasons why the Biden administration is trying so hard to escalate things with Ukraine and Russia so that he can be backed into a corner. I think it's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said recently they're going to give all the money they can to Ukraine before this presidency is over.
Right.
So, this is just an attempt, I think, to make it difficult for Donald Trump to be as anti-war as he can be. And I say anti-war, I don't necessarily mean for any moral reasons, but as a protectionist measure, America first, which, as you said, is a contradiction to the desires of the military-industrial complex.
Right.
Like I remember being a kid and learning about the Roman Empire and like the collapse of the Roman Empire and how they collapsed because they began to use their military for as a political force and not a military force, and they were over extended and they left themselves open and vulnerable to internal conflicts and external enemies to invade, which is what happened. And I remember seeing, and this was like I was still in school. This was like 20 years ago, and I remember thinking like, wow, this was happening to us like 20 years ago. And so you just see these kind of things compounding with the amount of military bases we have, and the way we're trying to go after Russia, China, Iran simultaneously. Even if, let's just say, and I'm not saying we could, but let's just say any of those countries individually we could handle perfectly fine. The three of those countries together are just a difficult threat because of the fact that they're three different large countries who have fairly advanced militaries, and in some cases more advanced than ours in some capacity. I was listening to something, and they were saying China produces aircraft carriers like half the time it takes us, or a quarter of the time it takes the U.S. to produce aircraft carriers. And so, it's just,
that's one of the downsides to the type of system that we have. The Chinese can do a lot of things faster than us because they don't have all of that red tape. They don't have a bunch of hands in the pocket in the pie. And they're not worried about, I want to get, I want to bring back this to my constituents. I need this particular, thing in my district so I can get paid. And, we call pork belly projects. You know what I'm saying? It's not, it's a one party system. You know what I mean? So they could do things very much way more efficiently than we do. They're not caring about the environment. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no unions. There's no arguments between you go whatever sweatshop or whatever is going got the contract to make whatever parts or whatever for the aircraft carrier. That's just all streamlined. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of the things they don't talk to you about. They don't bring up about democracy. Is messy. You know what I'm saying? Is as laborious, we argue a lot about, shit that really shouldn't be argued about or could be done better. That's our federated system. That's one of the weaknesses to it. You know what I mean? As much as we tout it as being the greatest, system in the world, because you got all these different voices and different interests when it comes to how things are done, in this country. Countries that don't have to deal with that, you know what I mean, it can do things way better, way faster, or what have you than us. I know, is the quality the same? Who knows? You know what I mean? But by the fact that they have been, the what they call it, the workshop of the globe. They've had time to, backwards engineer things. You know what I'm saying? Their people are much more united. You know what I mean? There's much more fairness in the education of all the different classes. You know what I'm saying? That's why Germany was such a strong country in World War II. You know what I mean? They had streamlined a lot of stuff. You know what I'm saying? They were thinking on one accord. You know what I mean? Like that's some of the positives, if you want to call it, of authoritarian, systems. It ain't all that arguing. You know what I mean? Like, once, hey, listen, this is it. This is how we're gonna come to this. Blah blah blah. We could marshal resources directly to that. You know what I mean? It's a lot less. Obviously, there's has and have not still, but again, it is for what it's worth. But I want to cover this. What we're talking about. This is some more information. Talking about IDF chief finally acknowledges that Israel supplied weapons to Syrian rebels, including Al Qaeda, and then how Jelani isn't, criticizing, and he refuses to criticize Israel. Obviously, we just saw the last clip. where he's telling Palestinian groups that have to demand, or they could just do charities and things of that nature. I guess that's supposed to be the middle ground, But anyways, let's see this.
You're placing restrictions on your own people,
right? Well, they're Palestinians, they're serious.
But so is he, right?
No, I was wrong. I remember he was from Golan Heights, which is actually occupied. It's an occupied, but it's an occupied territory in Syria. So I mean, he should be aligned with the Palestinians due to the fact that portion of Syria was lost in 1967. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I was confusing Golan with Gaza. So that's where I got it confused, and that's why I corrected myself later. I said no, he's actually from Golan Heights, which is a territory that Israel took from Syria and occupied. You know what I mean? So he should be within, you know what I'm saying, like lockstep with the Palestinians. Basically, he was born in Saudi Arabia because his people had to flee. You know what I mean? No different than the Palestinians, that have they had to leave and go to other countries, go to Jordan, go to other places. You know what I'm saying? He should be in the same struggle with them and identify his plight. But notice he said it. You know what I'm saying? He's already dropped that Jolani thing. That Al Jolani was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Him acknowledging those roots of where he's from. He's his people are from Golan Heights, but he never grew up there. I'd be like me calling myself Al Detroit, or now we even say that Al Jackson or something like that, because my people from Jackson, Mississippi, or you know what I'm saying? Like I have a connection to Mississippi, but I'm not from Mississippi. You know what I'm saying?
He's a Syrian AOC.
Yeah, exactly. But now
whatever wave is popping off, that's what he's jumping on.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, a Kamala. You know what I mean? But anyways, here you go.
Israel has been supporting the Al-Qaeda-linked rebels in Syria who were trying to overthrow the Syrian government and who did succeed. And Israeli newspaper, the Jerusalem Post, even admitted that Israel had been supporting Al-Qaeda in Syria in its fight against the Assad government.
Bro, did you just see that? It said they're treating the wounded. No, that's a new level, bro. But we're supposed to believe that Al-Qaeda is the best. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the whole point of us saying is like, dude, wait up. The reason why we went to Afghanistan, because the Taliban didn't attack us, allegedly, but they were harboring Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. And they said, Bush and them said, give them up, or we're going to come take you down. And Taliban said, hey, we ain't turning on our brothers. You know what I mean? They came to fight for us when we needed them to. We ain't turning on our brothers. So that justified the whole going into Afghanistan, right? That was the whole reason. Now, dog, that's you know what, we were going to cover some more, and maybe we can cover. How long are we into this, bro? We at 1:30. Yeah, I want to cover the last bit of this, and we could do our wrap ups. But we were going to actually show, how the America, the British, you know what I'm saying, how on one end we'll instigate a overthrow of some government that we don't like for whatever reason, you know what I mean, and then support that rebel group, and then later on turn on that rebel group or that dictator. You know what I mean, and create a war, and then come right back. You know what I mean, like we could go back and forth on both sides. You know what I'm saying? Well, the Taliban is pure example of that. But the Taliban and Al Qaeda, you know what I'm saying, and Mujahideen and all of that. Yeah. But anyways, I just want to cover this real quick, and we can get up out of here.
Now, there are some very confused and ignorant people who claim that they both support Palestinian human rights and liberation, but they also supported the overthrow of the Syrian government by Israel, by the United States. And the Israeli media has been saying very clearly, boasting, as the Israeli newspaper Haaretz put it, quote, "The downfall of the Assad regime is Israel's victory," end quote. So they're not hiding the fact that Israel sees this as a major victory against a key part of the axis of resistance. Syria had provided support to resistance groups in Palestine, in Lebanon, fighting against US-Israeli colonialism, defending their sovereignty, defending the rights of their people. And now that the Syrian government has been overthrown, this is a major blow to the resistance forces in the region. This is a major victory for US-Israeli colonialism. In fact, after the Syrian government was overthrown, Netanyahu delivered a speech in which he announced that Israel is changing the face of the Middle East. He gave a speech in Hebrew, but there was an English language translation published. Of course, I should point out that Netanyahu is currently wanted by the International Criminal Court at The Hague over crimes against humanity he has been officially charged with that he has committed in Gaza. But while he's facing these charges at The Hague, Netanyahu boasted in this speech, quote, "The collapse of the Syrian regime is a direct result of the severe blows with which we have struck Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran." Later in the speech, Netanyahu boasted of doing severe damage to the axis of resistance. And then he said, quote, "As I promised, we are changing the face of the Middle East," end quote. And in this quest to completely reshape the region and colonize the region, Israel's next target is Iran. And after the Syrian government was overthrown, Netanyahu published a video online in which he gave a speech directed at the Iranian people, and he called for the people of Iran to overthrow their government. Iran has been one of the...
Did we say that? You know what I'm saying? But I had never seen this before. But wasn't it then I say, like, that's probably going to be the outcome? You know what I mean? Ultimately, what they want to do. You know, that was no different from when President Bush, after, you know, we kicked Saddam out of Kuwait, you know what I mean? And but we didn't do a direct invasion of Iraq, right? Until his son became president in 2003. But in 91, when we kicked, you know, the Saddam forces out, it was real quick in a hurry. After, you know, months of him occupying Kuwait. And that, you know, we may come back to that another day. But the main thing is, but President Bush got on the TV and encouraged the people of Iraq to remove Saddam Hussein. He said, because he ultimately, you know, this is the father. He's like, you know, our mission was accomplished by getting, you know, Saddam out of Kuwait, but you know, they weren't regime changing. They weren't gonna go that far, because I think we were too close to Vietnam. You know what I'm saying? In 91, you know what I mean? It wasn't that far. You know, Vietnam wasn't that long ago, and I don't think he didn't want to be no wartime president like that. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, the Kurds and the Shia tried to, you know, get Saddam out, but he basically was able to Saddam put the resistance down, and then that's when we went after that, you know, and because the people thought that the Americans was going to help them, but obviously we didn't. Then we established they call the no-fly zone, where we prevented Saddam from, you know, engaging in any activities, any military activities in the north and the south of his own country. And we were actively patrolling, you know, with our fighter jets, you know, day after day, night after night for several years. That was what, from 90, that didn't end till when we started the war in 2003. You know what I mean? Those no-fly zones were enforced for well over a decade. I'm gonna do the math right now, but well over a decade. So yeah, bro, that just you know history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it definitely rhymes. Let me get to the part where Jelani. Okay, yeah, here we go. Right here.
And Israel. So while Israel and the US are making these plans for more and more war, what is happening inside Syria? What is the new regime doing? Well, the de facto leader of the new regime in Syria is the former leader of Al-Qaeda. His name is Abu Muhammad al-Julani, and he has made it clear publicly, I'm reading from the Financial Times, quote, "Syria is not interested in conflict with Israel," rebel leader says, end quote. Now, the real name of this rebranded Al-Qaeda leader in Syria is Ahmad Ashara. He was using the name Al-Julani, but now that he's in power as part of yet another rebranding exercise, he distanced himself from Al-Qaeda. He changed his name again. So now he's using his birth name, which is Ahmad Ashara. And he gave a speech in which he said that he has, quote, no intention of confronting Israel, end quote. And then he reiterated, quote, we are not looking to engage in a conflict with Israel, end quote. Instead of saying that he wants to liberate Syrian land, which is ironic because Al-Julani is named after the Golan Heights, Al-Julan. So instead of saying that he's going to liberate the Golan Heights, he's allowing Israel to continue colonizing the Golan Heights, to annex the Golan Heights illegally, and to take more and more Syrian land. And instead of actually challenging Israel, this rebranded Al-Qaeda leader, what did he say? He said that the overthrow of Assad was a, quote, victory over the dangerous Iranian project in the region, end quote. This is why the US and Israel have been supporting these Al-Qaeda-linked so-called rebels for years, because they've been using them as puppets against Iran and resistance forces in the region. And here you have rebranded Al-Qaeda leader in Syria openly saying, we have no issue with Israel. Our issue is with Iran. We're going to fight Iran on behalf of the U.S. empire and Israeli colonialism.
So, man, that was, again, we don't have time. We don't got the time right now because this was too deep. We try to show you, things to what we're saying. But I was going to cover the history of Iran, U.S. involvement in Iran, U.S. involvement in Iraq, and U.S. involvement in Afghanistan. And, bro, I mean, I can't say the U.S. knows what it's doing. This is not we're revisiting the mistakes of the past. No, bro, this is SOP, standard operating procedure. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, this is gonna give us an excuse. Like, we support them now, but at some point in time, for whatever reason, whether legit or not, they're gonna turn on us or they're gonna do something. You know what I'm saying? And then that'll justify us to be in the region. If that's right. If you get anything from what I'm saying tonight, the message out of all the stuff I'm telling you is that this is all precursor for a further larger engagement in the Middle East and all over again, you know what I mean, to get us, and then we'll be bogged down for another 10, 15, 20 years paying for, these operations, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. You went over a lot of information, but I mean, we have this kind of problem a lot. We talked about this a couple of days ago, where they kind of make it like, Black people or Black Americans or whatever have an inability to work together, to unify for a common goal, in order to uplift our community or whatever. But I mean, this should serve as evidence for anybody who's paying attention that this is an issue that you can see replicated all over the world. I mean, in Europe, in the Middle East, or in Asia, which is, where the Middle East is, in Africa, in South America, right, in North America. So, it's not something unique to the Black community, this disunity or this factionalism or whatever. But what also needs to always be remembered is the U.S. government has a hand in this. And, I think it was sufficient for me to just assume that the U.S. allowed Israel to behave this way because all of our political leaders were blackmailed, or because they were looking for campaign donations from Israel. But now, with clearer eyes and with all these conflicts have continued to pop up and be propped up around the world, what I've had to understand and come to terms with is that the U.S. government directs Israel to do these things, because you cannot tell me there's nobody in office who is clean enough to stand against this. You know what I'm saying? There's no way, unless you know, some of the more far out conspiracies are actually true. You cannot convince me that there is nobody who is actually clean enough to resist this type of influence from Israeli lobbying organizations or billionaires or Zionist organizations or ideology or any of that stuff. Not to mention, like what you were just saying, looking at what were you talking about? You were saying something about it wasn't that you were going to see an increase in these conflicts and maybe branching off into Iran. Maybe I won't remember. But I mean, ultimately, you know, we live in a parasitic or cannibalistic financial structure, and the country, the elites, the wealthy, the corporations cannibalize the people. Like I said, I was talking to my wife and my little sister about this, years ago, really before like the mid 70s, American companies would exploit the world and then bring those goods home and then give them to us at a cheaper rate.
Right. That's globalization.
Right. And what eventually happened is the people who produce the things, the corporations, the elites, the wealthy, they have gotten to a point where they wanted so much more return on investment, so much more profit, that they realized they needed to start to exploit us as well. And so, we live in this, cannibalistic system where, it isn't about what is necessary, but it's about creating the conditions for conflict in order to, produce the weapons or to produce, the military contracts or whatever you're looking for. But this guy, I mean, you cannot look at him. You cannot look at the way he's behaving. You can't look at the actions that he's taking. You can't look at the way the news media is treating this man and think that it's anything other than like some kind of plan, right? Like I said, the president-elect, the former president of the United States, doesn't get this kind of glowing support from the media.
Right.
American citizens who have not killed anybody, right? Who just in the Capitol. And as information is coming out now, we understand the FBI had agents, or they call them confidential human sources, so undercover people present during the January 6th riot or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And they still don't get the same kind of treatment from a man who is wanted by the U.S. government for $10 million. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's I don't know if people are ever going to wake up. I don't know if people are ever going to get to a point where they can no longer take the BS and want to do something else about it. But we need to be paying attention at the very least, because a conflict with Iran is very possible. There's an ever-growing escalation with China, and the situation with Russia is increasing. They're still shooting off ATACMS missiles into Russia as we speak. And so, it appears that after this latest, there was an IED placed near a top general in the Russian military, which killed him, and maybe either killed an assistant or severely wounded one of his assistants. Russia may be prepared to do decapitation strikes on top-ranking officials in the Ukrainian government. So we could see the war would escalate to a new dimension. right? And this is all being done by an administration with, a
few days left.
33 days.
Yeah, a little bit over a month. Yeah, they're trying to do as much as they can to hand over a dirty situation to Trump.
Right.
Like maybe they're trying to bog him down with a war, so the Republicans will also be so unpopular. You know what I mean? That they'll get a Democrat in 28.
Right?
Who knows, dude? You know what I'm saying? Like who knows? But I wouldn't put it past them. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't put it past them. Make sure his economy is completely, because believe you me, if there was a war like, a full-fledged, war, with Iran, Israel, Iran, Russia, Ukraine. Like I said, I think they're doing everything to try to do a regime change in Iran. Because, I think if Iran is, if we attacked Iran, or we, I don't know how much Russia would do anything about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? China's not going to do anything about it. I don't think they're not willing to risk, treasure and blood. You know what I'm saying? I mean, of course they'll they condemn it, but as far as will they do anything militarily wise? No, I don't see that. Not for Iran. And maybe that's the part of the calculus. You know what I'm saying? That's part of the calculus. Assad was a proof of concept. You know what I mean? Okay, because Iran, back in 2011, we kind of alluded to it in 2011. People covered it. There was an uprising, and Assad was faced. He was dealing with a lot then, but because Russians and Iranians, through Hezbollah and the Russians through their control over their airspace, they were able to push keep those groups from overtaking Damascus. I'm sorry, but the reason why Assad fell is because he didn't have that ability. You know what I mean? Those governments aren't willing to put his own allies weren't willing to put their treasure at stake, their people's lives at stake, and especially because they were especially Russia. He's engaged with Ukraine right now, so via through with the U.S. via through Ukraine. You know what I'm saying? As a proxy war, to be honest with you. So yeah, dude, maybe that's the calculus, dude. Hey, this is the best time to do it while we can do it, And,
I think I remember when you were saying you like to go into detail about, the history of these countries. And so I think that might be a good idea for, a future show to kind of look at the history of Syria, to look at the history of Iran, to look at the history of Saudi Arabia, just to kind of give people a more complete picture of, Western influence in this region. Because I think we always hear about the British and we always hear about America, but I think one of the lesser talked about, at least here, groups or countries that had a significant influence on this region is the French.
Yeah.
They had a significant impact on this region. And so I don't think they get enough credit for the damage that they have done. We even in Africa, I don't think they get enough credit for the damage they've done in Africa. They control large. Yeah, well, yeah, they control large, at least politically, control large portions of Africa. I think they still print the money off for a large portion of countries in Africa. So that'll be something for us to do, in a future show, just to kind of break into that. I think that's important, just for the fuller understanding of, as freedmen, it's important for us to understand the global context of how we fit into this whole situation, what our government is doing when we're trying to navigate the reparations conversation, when we're trying to navigate a policy for descendants of freedmen, what that looks like, and how our government is actively pushing against, employment for descendants of freedmen, housing opportunities, education opportunities, all these things that, we advocate for through a reparations program, but also as a condition of citizenship, something that we have never been able to fully partake in because of the two-tiered citizenship that we have in this country. So, that's it, I think.
Yeah, man, for real. Yep, I think that definitely is it, man. And I feel like, this is important because at the end of the day, we are freemen, but we are, citizens of this country. You know what I mean? Definitely, we have plenty of free. I mean, every war that this country has fought, you know what I mean? Freemen were, former slave and then freemen have been part of it. That engaged it. I was a soldier. My ex stepson, just joined the army. He just had his graduation on November 13th. He's 24 years old in the army, active regular army, active duty army. We have loved ones. Many of us use the military as a stepping stone to for other things. Get into professional life or what have you. I did the same. So we should be concerned whenever there's blood. When blood and treasure could possibly be used. You know what I mean? On these excursions, that's really what they are. You know what I mean? In my opinion, excursions. I became very disillusioned towards the end of my military career. Very, because I'm just, I'm seeing how more and more, this isn't all about, I'm proud to be an American, and I'm, if it wasn't for the soldiers, we couldn't have the right for this and this. And that. I'm like, okay. But hey, thank you for your service. And I tell people, I guess I'm a hypocrite. I do tell people, they tell me they're military, they're military or whatever. I do say thank you for their service. But I actually do that to, even civil servants as well. You know what I'm saying? Thank you for your service, because I mean that should be acknowledged. But this whole mythos about, you know what I mean, we wouldn't have these rights if we didn't. You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't for the military and cops and things of that nature. Okay. But a lot of times I feel, that's just part of the mythos building, right? But I really, ultimately, what disillusioned me was I was just seeing how much the military is just being, played as a puppet, man. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people, like I said, families break up, when these things happen, man, people coming back with, PTSD, substance abuse problems, you know what I'm saying? All types of issues, man. Like sending America's sons and daughters, to war, man, should be like a very serious thing, bro. Like a very serious thing, and I just think it's really treated trivially because most of the people who are making these decisions, you know what I'm saying? Most of them, some of them are, but most of them, never served. You know what I mean? I mean, like our army is at, our military forces at an all-time low. When I first came into the military in the late '90s, we were structured to be able to fight because this was part of the thing Colin Powell and all of them had. Because these guys were Vietnam. They grew up in Vietnam. You know what I mean? A lot of those generals during that time, and the Clinton administration or what have you, and Reagan administration, they had the army was designed to be able to fight two wars on two fronts, and that was if we had to fight Iraq and we had to fight North Korea, that was what we were positioned. But as we over the years with Bush and all of them, when they came to office, what I'm saying, they quote unquote modernized the army. They slimmed it down and things of that nature, man. We were fighting asymmetrical fights. We weren't fighting army to army, we were fighting insurgencies. That takes a whole different level of a different skill set, things of that nature, man. So like to what Conspiracy Brother was saying, dude, if we had to go toe to toe Russia or China, or, you know what I'm saying, like a real conventional army, I don't know if we could really do it without having battlefield nukes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like most young adults aren't even. They're saying they can't even. You know, most young adults aren't even
PT.
going. You know what I mean? Like you know what I'm saying? Like, dude. See, I think that's when, you know, when if they brought back the draft, I think a lot of this shit would be, you'd be seeing a lot more up in arms. And that was the reason why they brought in that voluntary shit, because that's what happened with Vietnam. And motherfuckers was like, oh shit, I could be drafted. Oh, hold on. What are we doing over there? You know, that's when motherfuckers asking the question. But because we got all volunteer force, you know, you can say, oh, you know, thank you for your service. Yeah, until it's you, you know. It'll be like, oh, what? You know,
right?
It'd be a whole different thing. But with that being said, Freedman, said if you want to have the last man, peace and reparations. You know, we have no permanent friends, we have no permanent enemies, but only permanent interests. So that's what I leave out on, bro.
Yeah, and I was reminded of this when you were talking, and so you know, we're talking about Israel. So this will be my last thought. Because they talked about how the U.S. has helped to aid some of these overthrows of these governments. You know, Assad has promoted, you know, the Arab Spring, and you looked at in Egypt, and they're trying to overthrow Iran. And you said, well, how should the U.S. government respond in these situations? The same way they responded when an ally like Israel is having internal conflict and protests. You don't see the U.S. government going over to Israel and actively aiding Israeli citizens to overthrow Benjamin Netanyahu. They're staying out of it. You don't see it on the media. They're not actively tearing him down or critiquing him or criticizing him. They're not paying for rebel organizations within the country or rebel factions to overthrow his government or to, you know, stage revolutionary coups against the government. None of that. They're just
or election interference.
Right. None of that. They're just staying out of it. And so this is what we should ask our government or demand our government do around the world, to stay out of it. The same way we can manage to stay out of this, stay out of it. It's not our business. It's not our fight. And all it does is make us vulnerable, less safe, and definitely continues to disadvantage the situation of freedmen. So with that, you know, I'll end it there. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed what you heard. And we'll see you all probably, if not next Monday, the Monday or Tuesday after. Peace.
Right. We'll see. Peace. Peace and reparations.